know that this is a rough time for you and you've been through a lot as of late, but if you don't mind, before we begin, could you state your name for the record?
Yeah, sure, no problem. My name is Jesse Bright.
Good, thank you. You nervous?
How could I not be? It's not every day you give a statement to police.
You're right about that. Listen, all I care about is the truth so that we can get everything resolved in the proper manner. If there's anything you don't feel comfortable sharing or it gets too, real, you can stop anytime you want. You're not obligated to answer everything.
Thank you, but no, I think I'll be okay. I want people to know what happened. Just, can I get a cigarette?
Normally we don't allow people to smoke in here, but hey, Tony, you smoke, right? Mind if Miss Bright here got a cigarette? Feel better?
A little bit. Slightly less tense, I guess.
Good. Do you mind if I start asking you the questions?
Go for it.
Okay, Miss Bright. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Your background of sorts.
There's not much to say. I grew up in a normal home. Mom was a saleswoman and Dad worked a lot. 2 older brothers who were there, I guess. I did cheer for a bit in high school and also ran track. I was involved in a good amount of clubs, so I was pretty popular around school. I had a lot of friends and a lot of boyfriends, a couple girlfriends.
Was that ever a lot of pressure? Juggling all of that?
Of course. Whoever would say otherwise is either crazy or a liar.
Fair enough. I think I'd agree with that. You must have been pretty tired every day after coming home. I can't see how doing all of this wouldn't make a person irritable.
I have my off days, but who doesn't? There are definitely times I got into it with my parents or my siblings. I just don't think they understood the pressure. Being a student who was involved in so many things and still maintain a 4.0, and then to still come home to people going off on me for the smallest things. Sometimes I was able to grin and bear it, but other times, I'd go off. Just seemed as if nothing I did was good enough for them.
Must have worn on you a lot. What made you stick with it?
An incredible desire to work hard. I don't know. Part of me thinks that I was just used to living like that. I think under any circumstances, if you've adapted, you're just not likely to change things, even if it makes your life easier.
Did you work?
I wish. My family was pretty well off, so I didn't need to, but I definitely would have taken the extra time to be away from them if I could have. But I was so busy with everything else and caught up in my own academics that I frankly just didn't have the time or energy.
I want to zero in on something you said. You would have taken the extra time to be away from them if you could have. Was there a major problem living at home? I understand what you said about the arguments, but that seems relatively normal for a teen and their family.
I guess you could say that. Remember when I mentioned that there were times I got into it with my parents and siblings? Well, that was all of the time. There was constant bickering, and with my dad in particular, he...
Did he hit you?
Hit makes it sound like he threw a pillow at me or something. No, he didn't hit me. He broke my fucking nose.
Jesus. Did you ever go to the police?
What for? What the hell were they gonna do? Arrest a rich guy who abused his daughter in an upscale neighborhood where everyone has their dirty little secrets? Please. All it would have done is pissed him off more.
And your brothers? Where were they in all of this?
Who knows? Scared of daddy, maybe. I don't think they had the best view of women to begin with, so I kind of think they thought that's how things were supposed to be.
And your mom?
Drugged up whenever she got a chance. When she wasn't working, she was either downing pills or downing a bottle, whichever she could get to first. And you know, I think Dad preferred it that way. She was always too far gone to fuck another man, as far as he was concerned. As long as she could hold down a job and he got sex and dinner when he came home, he couldn't care less what she did.
Jesse, I'm so sorry. I know you've had a rough time, and I haven't been working here up until recently, but if I was around, and I had known...
If you had known, then what? I'm not the only girl that goes through this, you know. As far as I'm concerned, everyone knows. Pick a girl at random. Any of us. Bet you my life savings there was some asshole in her life that's abused or mistreated her at some point. Does anyone ask? Does anyone step in? The signs aren't hard to spot either. If you knew, you would have turned a blind eye just like the rest of them. Whatever.
It's not true. There are good people out there that want to help. There's just a lot of bad ones too, but I promise you, there are some out there that want to make sure others are safe.
From personal experience, I'd have to strongly disagree. Trust me, there aren't that many good people out there.
Let's move on. You lived by yourself for a bit, is that correct? How did you get out of the house? What happened then?
College. I wanted to be a liberal arts major, but I decided I also wanted to be paid and not have to rely on someone to pick up the bills. So I said, screw it, and went for computer science.
Smarter than I'll ever be to do that.
Yeah, I pride myself on not being an idiot. Doesn't always work out, but I like to at least try, which is more than I can say for most people. You see who they have in office these days?
Hey, I didn't say you were wrong. Just that some people have more optimism. Not necessarily that I'm one of those people. Just that it's there. I don't know. Aside from that, tell me what happened in your college days.
I had a blast. Not gonna lie to you, I got into a lot of extracurriculars. Computer science isn't the easiest thing to major in, so I went out a lot. Drugs, random hookups, parties, all kinds of adventures.
Sounds like a pretty typical college experience.
Not impressed?
I am curious though. At what point did you meet Thomas King? Was it in college? Jesse, he's a pretty big part of this whole story. Like I said, if you're not comfortable, we can end this conversation and go from here with what we have.
No. No. I want this story to be told right. I want this to be the truth.
Alright then. At what point did you meet Thomas King?
Thomas and I met at a college party when I was a junior. I was drunk, but not drunk enough to completely ignore a cute boy staring at me from across the room.
He say anything to you?
Hey, wanna play some beer pong? I don't know. I accepted his offer, but I would have with any cute guy if I had enough alcohol. He wasn't special.
At the time he wasn't, at least.
If I'm being completely honest, I thought that'd be the last time I'd see him. We actually won a few games, and by the time we got our asses beat by some really talented couple, I tried to look for my friends who had lost in the 30 or so minutes we were there. He stopped me real quick to ask for my Snapchat before I left, and I gave it to him, not really thinking I'd actually talk to him. I just kind of thought of it as a situation where another guy would just see my story, maybe we'd mess around, and that'd be it.
Then?
He messaged me. It started off friendly, but as we talked more and more, I began to actually really like the guy. I didn't expect us to connect the way we did, so when he asked me out, I said, what the hell? We ended up meeting up and I had an amazing time. We then started spending more and more time together, and he was so patient, you know? It actually took him to our 5th date for him to even kiss me, and from there we were official.
What then? Tell me about what happened after you two were officially a couple.
It was fine to start, I suppose. We had great conversations, well, more like he'd talk and I'd listen, which, to be frank, should have been a sign. He didn't really ever ask me for my opinion on things, he just kind of talked. But he'd give me gifts, he'd take me places, and the sex was...
You don't need to go into detail about that last thing. That's not important for the record. But I would like to explore that relationship. Could you go into detail?
Remember when I said he would just talk? Thomas was... I don't really want to say egotistical, but I kind of do want to say egotistical, because he was. I think that he saw himself as this young, handsome messiah that was smarter than every other fucking person he met. And I swear to God, that smug look on his face whenever he'd make some kind of grand truth about people or the world just bothered the living crap out of me.
I can tell that this upsets you.
How'd you know?
Lucky guess. Did you ever live together?
We did. After I finished school, we were still together, and I had actually found a job in the same area as my university. He had already graduated and had an apartment, so we mutually decided it would make sense for us to live together.
How was that?
I'm not going to BS you and say it was the best thing for me. Getting used to live with another person is always going to have its own struggles.
Did you guys fight a lot?
We had our fair share of fights. He'd argue with me about the smallest things. He'd say, I know what's best for you, or how dare you talk to me like that? Like
he was your dad.
I was gonna say, like, the manipulative asshole he was, but I see the connection.
Considering what happened, I can't help but feel like there is more going on than just arguments.
Well, you mentioned that dad point, right? I think you can take a guess as to what happened in our wonderful little home.
God, I can't make assumptions, so you're gonna have to.
He hit me. Is that better? Got it out in the open. He hit me. He threw things at me. He cussed me out. He yelled at me about how women aren't shit and how every bitch just needs a man to set her straight.
How do you think he went from being nice to doing all of that?
Because once I agreed to live with him in his house, he felt empowered to do whatever. The change was quick. There were signs along the way, but silly me for thinking that someone wasn't likely to be that crappy of a human being.
And you didn't leave? You had a job and...
Leave? God, no. I don't think you understand the magnitude of what was happening here. It wasn't just domestic abuse.
Excuse me?
The guy was into some really satanic stuff. And I mean that literally. He was into satanic rituals and kept calling on some spirit he called the Man Who Whispers.
The Man Who Whispers? What's all that about?
I guess he thought that he heard a voice whispering to him, telling him to do things and direct others to follow his lead. I think he saw himself as some sort of oracle? Or maybe a prophet? They're the same thing, right?
I can't speak on that personally. I'm not really a huge believer in all of that. But I am wondering how it plays into all of this.
Because if beating me up wasn't enough, apparently this man convinced him that if I said anything, he'd be protected if he kills my whole family. I don't know if he would have done that, but he definitely would have come looking for me, regardless of the weird crap he was into. Besides, I don't really think people understand how hard it is to break away. Even without someone threatening to hurt you. Despite all the drama, I thought I loved him.
I don't want to make any assumptions. After all, you did come here under your own volition. But now that I think I have a basic understanding of what is going on, how did all of this lead to what happened on May 13th?
The day started off like any other. He had taken off work for a week because he said he had this special project he was working on. He liked to build stuff, so I just kind of assumed he was making something. But that's when I noticed things were off. He was silent the entire day. Now that I think about it, when I walked into the kitchen, he was just kind of sitting there. Not eating, not on his phone, just sitting in silence, staring off into nothing.
Then what?
I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't even turn towards me. So I just kind of grabbed one of our ceramic bowls, made some cereal, and then went to the couch and watched some TV.
Go on.
I was sitting on the couch, and he walked up to me. He looked so blank, and his eyes, they were just dead. I asked him if he was okay, but he didn't respond. I was getting freaked out, so I tried to get up and walk away, but as soon as I got up, he shoved me down. I told him that if he touched me, I'd call the cops. When I looked up again, his eyes, they had gone dark. It was like all the emptiness from before was replaced with rage. I knew in that moment he was going to kill me. He jumped forward and sat on top of me with his hands wrapped around my neck. It was like he wanted to feel the life drain out of me.
So, how'd you escape?
I'm getting to that. As I lay there, scratching and clawing, I could feel myself slipping away. I thought in that moment that it was pointless. I thought I should stop fighting, but I heard something call out to me. Something told me to keep going. I scrambled, looking for something to defend myself with, and luckily I found that bowl I'd used. He leaned his face into mine and I smashed it into the side of his head. He tumbled off of me and I ran to our room and closed the door.
Wait, you ran to your room instead of running out of the house?
Okay, I'm sorry that I wasn't exactly in the right frame of mind at the moment. My room is where I felt safe, and I don't know. The voice in my head that was guiding me told me that's where I needed to be. Sure enough, when I got in there to hide, I found his aluminum bat resting in the closet.
It's interesting. Go on.
After he came to, he rammed himself into the door over and over and over again. Hinges were starting to pop off the wall, and I was just sitting there clutching the bat, sobbing. And when he finally crashed through the door, I saw he had a knife, and as soon as I did, I raised the bat and swung it across his face. He hit the ground. I didn't want him to come after me, so I started swinging at his legs. I could hear the bones shattering, but I couldn't stop. God, the sound, I could vomit just thinking about it.
This is all very interesting, Mrs. Bright. So you managed to get the upper hand and eventually defend yourself. But from what we know, he was still alive then. So the question that prompted this meeting in the first place, if he was incapacitated and unable to hurt you, and you could have escaped and called the police, then why did you murder Thomas King?
You know, the craziest thing is, Thomas wasn't wrong about the voice. When he had his hands around my neck, when he was about to take my life, a life he had no fucking right to in the first place, I heard it. It came to me, and it was so beautiful. It told me to go to the kitchen, grab the biggest knife we had, and cut off his arms and legs so he could never chase down and hit me or another woman ever again. It told me I needed to slice open his chest and leave his cheating heart exposed. It told me that I needed to cut that smug grin of his into a permanent scowl that no one would ever fall for.
And so you took a hammer and knocked out all of his teeth to evade arrest?
Evade arrest? No, if I wanted to do that, I would have cleaned up the mess, and I wouldn't have come to you. No. I knocked out all his teeth, along with cutting out his tongue, because the voice told me it didn't want to hear him speak back to it. He wasn't worthy of the conversation.
And you running away from the body then? If you didn't care about being arrested, then why leave?
Because then, I wouldn't have got to see the reactions. To see all the girls he's abused cheer that their tormentor was no more. To see his sisters feign tears on television but jump joyously in the streets because the monster that hurt them in so many ways was gone. To see the horror on every man's face knowing that if they even thought about being as awful as he was, then they'd meet the same horrible fate. I needed to see that in person before anything.
Well, Mrs. Bright, unfortunately, this seems to be a pretty open and shut case. You do affirm that these actions you were referring to were carried out by you and you alone, and that this is your official confession to the capital murder of Thomas King on May the 13th. You'd be willing to testify in court to all of that?
Precisely.
Well then, I guess this interview is over.
Oh, one more thing before you cut the tape.
Yeah? What's that?
He was wrong. The voice wasn't a man. It was a woman.
Hey, Tony, detective, good work in there. Thanks, I appreciate it. But, did that case seem weird to you? Weird. Some crazy bitch murders a boyfriend, cut off his fucking limbs and everything. How's that not weird? I don't know, man. It's just, she seems so serious about the voices. From someone that has absolutely no history of psychological disorders, it's just weird that in that moment she'd start hearing murderous voices. Especially when she had a chance to leave. This could have easily been a self-defense case that landed him in prison for attempted murder. Domestic assault at the very least. Stress makes people do weird things, detective. Don't question it. Weird like that? I'm not sure I buy it. I don't know, maybe the years of trauma just made her snap, but I feel like this isn't how people usually snap. It's usually a single action in the heat of the moment, not a calculated move to defile a guy's body. I don't know, she confessed to the crime, that's all we can do. I guess, man, it's just, I really hope the next guy isn't as off.